So now it's time to work on getting the text that the user is going to type here and send it to our application in order to respond here, in order to let the chatbot respond. But how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, let me explain the logic behind this. First of all, once the user types something here and then clicks on send, what we need to do is that obviously we need to get that text and then we need to send it. We need to send it to our Flask here. So we need to create a route that will get that text, that will respond, will get first that text, and then will respond by using, remember, by using the get response, and sends the response back to the user and displays the response here so that the user sees that response. But in order to send that text, in order to make a connection between the input and Flask application, we need JavaScript. So I'm going to be using jQuery. Of course, you can use vanilla JavaScript, but jQuery is it's better in terms of the code. It's easier in terms of the code. Instead of creating a very long code that's going to send or make a request using vanilla JavaScript, you can simply use jQuery, and the code would be much less. So you can head on over to code.jquery.com, and then I'm going to be using jQuery here. You can click on this, on compressed, and then you can copy this script. I'm going to be using, obviously, I'm going to be using a CDN version of jQuery instead of downloading it. So I'm going to copy this. You need to copy it. Click here to copy that link, and then you need to head on over back to your application, and in the index, you must include this in the beginning here in the top before the styles. I'm gonna just paste it, and now we have jQuery in our application. So now we can start working on the logic and add our code here. So how are we gonna do that? Well, let me show you what I'm gonna be doing. So obviously now that we have jQuery, I'm gonna here at the bottom, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create a script and use jQuery. So here, just above the closing body tag, I'm going to create here a script, and that script obviously is going to be using jQuery script. So here inside that script, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a function that's going to first get that text from the user, get that text, and then send it to our Flask application, and then Flask will use this get response to send a response back to us here in the to the user in the index.html. And obviously once the response is sent to the HTML, it will be displayed here, and the user will see everything, will be able to look at the conversation between him or her and the chatbot. So here again, back to the index.html, I'm going to here create a function, and then I'm going to name this function get user response, and then this function is going to be using obviously jQuery. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to get the text from this text input. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to say $sign because I'm using jQuery. And if you don't know jQuery, don't worry, it's just very simple. Just follow along and you will understand, and I'll also walk you through the code. So first of all, I'm going to make a reference here to this ID text input. So it's text input. Let me just get close to this, and then here I'm going to make a reference to this in order to get the text from that text input, and then .val, which is a function given by jQuery, and this function is going to get the text from that text input. So it's going to pull out the text from this input and store it in a variable. So I'm going to create here a variable called user text. User text is going to be equal to this. So now we have the text from the user. What I'm going to do is that I am going to display that text that's sent by the user here immediately, because immediately after the user types something here and clicks on send, we need to display that text here, but we also need to get it. So we need to do two things. First, we need to get it, and send it to Flask. And we also want to display it here because we want to tell the user, hey user, the text that you have typed here has been sent and it's now displayed here. So I'm gonna first here use, I'm gonna use here, I'm gonna create here a variable called var and then user HTML, and it's gonna be equal to a paragraph p, and then this p is gonna have a class because I want to add designs to the text that the user is going to send. Once the user sends that text, we want to display it here, and I want to add designs to that element that will be injected here in the page. So here I'm going to create a class, and that class is going to be named user text, and I'm going to also add span as I did, exactly as I did with, as I have done with the bot text. So here span, and inside that span I want here span, and let me first close this p. Inside that span I'm going to display the text. So I'm going to say here user text. I'm going to display the user text here in between, and now we have this variable, the user HTML. We need to inject that into our page. So we can, of course, do that using jQuery very easily. I'm going to here first remove the text from this input, because once the user clicks on it, we will get it displayed here and remove it from this input. I'm not going to keep it here. I'm not going to keep the text that the user has typed here in this input. So I'm going to say here $, and then here $, and then again reference to this text input, and then I'm going to say that val, and then that value is going to be empty. So the value is going to be empty, is just going to be empty. And then I'm going to inject that user input to our page. So I'm going to make a reference again using the $, and then here chat box. Remember this chat box, and then I'm going to inject by using the append. I'm going to inject that user HTML. So I'm going to pass this user HTML into the chatbot, which is the container of our which works as a container of our conversation. And then now it's very important to also kind of scroll, because as the conversation gets many messages, we will not have enough space here. So we need to scroll automatically as the conversation gets longer and longer. So here I'm going to say document dot get element by ID, and then user input, which is this user input, and then I'm going to say dot scroll into view. So I'm going to say scroll into view, and then I'm going to just here pass an object block, and I'm going to just say start, and then comma, and then behavior, and then smooth, and this is very important because we want again to give the user the best possible user experience.